For the next hour, 58 NASCAR Nextel Cup drivers will test Daytona International Speedway in hopes of finding enough speed and enough driver comfort, enough handling to make it into the Great American Race in Thursday's Gatorade Duel at Daytona. This, then, is their final practice session for Thursday's qualifying races. Let's get downstairs to Alan Bestwick.
Mike, Tony Stewart just climbing aboard his car. I spoke with Tony just a second ago about his first practice. He said they went out on older tires than most people and put a full fuel run on those tires. Said his car was sliding around. You talked about driver comfort and speed. Stewart's team has made some changes looking for that, which they did not have in that first practice session, which was driver comfort. To Marty Snyder.
Alan, meantime, there's an entire group of drivers who must race their way in tomorrow in the duels. As Mike just talked about, this is their final practice to do so. In today's first practice, Kevin LePage from Vermont was one of the fastest cars out there. Fourth fastest. When did that fast lap come, Kevin?
Well, it's just the hard work that Greg Connors and all the guys on the AMP Energy Drink team's been working. You know, we didn't really put up a good lap yesterday in qualifying or over the weekend, but the car really drafts as well, and we got a good suck, and we put some real good laps up there doing that first practice.
Kevin must race his way in tomorrow, but he did that last year when he finished third in the duels and started 8th for the Daytona 500. Mike.
Thanks, Marty. He's a good pick for a Cinderella story. Hi, everybody. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Jeff Hammond with you once again. In the first hour of practice, we dealt with Jimmy Johnson's problem and Chad Knaus, his crew chief's exit from Daytona, and the topic of bump drafting and slam dancing. But what we saw in that practice session, that 1 hour, and what we should likely see in this one is that that's old news. Now it's all about getting to race well enough to get in the big race.
But that was practice, and you've got to believe tomorrow in those Dual 150s, we've got 19 guys that are bidding for 7 positions in the Daytona 500. They are not locked in. And trust me, when it gets down to those final 10 laps of that 60 race tomorrow, I would say probably this gentleman attitude that's going on right now today in practice, possibly out the window.
But, Jeff, you're only racing that group of cars if you have to race your way into the Daytona 500, and all of the cars that are guaranteed in the race that are in your race, how can you ignore them? But you have to.
Well, you've got to learn how to come up with your own kind of game plan. I mean, strategy is going to be very important, not only during this final practice, but as you go into tomorrow, realizing who you need to race, how you need to race them, and where you need to put your car as far as the position is concerned. If you're already in the Daytona 500, you don't want to do anything stupid. That's the key thing right now. You don't want to wreck your best race car. And for a lot of these teams, I think in this final practice here, they're going to be taking care of business and protecting those cars.
Track will be open shortly for Nextel Cup practice. Every champion earns sportsmanship and fame, but only one will be honored as the Speed Driver of the Year. The wait is finally over. The Driver of the Year show is tonight, only on Speed, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Cars lined up, waiting on the track to open for practice. And for those cars that had a pretty good first practice, Kenny Schrader and the Wood Brothers 21 car be the first car to roll off pit road. But this is kind of a confirmation. You learn things in that first practice. We know this racetrack continues just to get slicker and slicker because the track temperature is going up. But you don't want to be out there and put yourself in a bad situation.
I've got to take issue with this. Yes, it's the brand new Corvette pace car for the Gatorade Duel at Daytona. But to come to a stock car track with the word rain emblazoned all over your pace car, it's asking for trouble. It's a new product from Gatorade.
You know, the thing is so interesting when you look at that car, it looks like it's just sitting there smiling at you. I mean, it's so cool, you know, the way they were able to make that look.
Yeah, the last car I saw with that kind of look was the Bug Eye Sprite, the little Happy Frog car.
Exactly
well,
right.
Didn't look quite like that. Didn't go like that either. Sunday live from Daytona, the all-new race day built by Home Depot. Inside secrets, expert access, and lots of adrenaline. It's set for the Daytona 500 with NASCAR race day Sunday morning, 11 Eastern, only on Speed. This looks like the Thursday Gatorade Duel at Daytona. It does not look at all like practice. If this is practice, It's pretty heated out there.
You know, we've been talking about the DEI cars. They didn't qualify well, but Martin Truex in the #1 car just a minute ago pulled out from behind the 38 of Elliott Sadler, made a pretty bold move to the inside, brought Jamie McMurray right along with him, and they're looking pretty racy right now down that back straightaway.
We talk about cars that have to race their way in. You see that third car in line on the inside row, Scott Riggs, in the Valvoline #10 car. Remember, this is a new third Ray Evernham team. Fast down here in testing in January, fast in practice. It appears they possibly tore a gear up qualifying, so now he's going to have to start back in 27th position in that second Gatorade Duel race. He's got to race his way in.
Fastest car the last lap, Mark Martin. Fastest car this lap, Dale Jarrett. Now all these cars are running essentially the same speed in that pack, so what it means was that Jarrett started the lap several car lengths behind that pack and ended the lap right up, nestled up amongst them. Now that's the only way you can gain on the chart in a situation like this. Alan Bestwick.
Hey, Mike, at the end of that last practice, remember the problem that Denny Hamlin had in this 11 car. This is where this machine will remain for all of this practice. I just talked to crew chief Mike Ford. They're going to take their time, repair the body damage on the right side of the car. They've already replaced the entire right front suspension, but they will not be getting any track time this afternoon, and he's fairly disappointed in that. They'd like to have another run before tomorrow.
Well, every car, every driver is a little bit different, but this is where having teammates helps so much. They'll be able to walk over to the 18 car, J.J. Yaley. They'll be able to walk over to Greg Zipadelli and Tony Stewart in the 20 car. What did you learn this practice? Now, I think Denny Hamlin could possibly use all the seat time he could use, even after winning the Budweiser shootout, but I agree with Mike Ford. Let's make sure this car is right. Let's just don't throw it together just to get out there and practice.
That's a good way to have to wind up going in your backup car if you're not careful. And again, you don't want to discourage this young man. He is a rookie, even though he had a phenomenal race the other day winning that Budweiser shootout, but you don't want to send him back out there until that car is perfect.
See another car in the middle of the pack right there, the DeWalt car, Matt Kenseth in the 17. Like Scott Riggs, in practice had a pretty fast race car, but had a flat left rear tire qualifying, so he's going to have to start back in 28th position out of the 29 cars in the first duel race. He's locked into the 500, but I'm sure he would love to improve that starting position.
And again, briefly, the top 35 in car owner points from 2005 are locked in to the Daytona 500. Now, some of those teams have changed numbers or have changed hands, and some of those teams have rookie drivers, but it's car owner points that determine who is locked in. Everybody else has to time in or race in. Alan?
Hey, Mike, talk with Doug Richard, Greg Biffle's crew chief. They didn't get a lot of laps in that first practice session. They went out and ran what he called about 4 good laps and did not like the way the car was behaving at all. So they came back in, regrouped, changed several things. In fact, Doug told me he went as far back as his 2004 Daytona race notes, and then put a plan underneath the car based off what they did in the test here in January with a few modifications to see if Biffle might like this a little better out there in traffic.
Well, one big variable is the weather. When they practiced early in the week, it was very cool here. Temperatures were in the 50s, might have touched 60. Today, it is in the mid to high 70s, and the track temperature way up over what it was with a heavy cloud cover earlier in the week. So that could change things quite a bit.
Quite a bit, exactly, Mike. And then even when they were tested down here in early January, the first part of January, that first test, the weather was very good, very predictable. The second week, and Larry McReynolds, you were here, winds were up. It was chilly. It was totally different. But the key thing is right now, it's been a 24-hour race on this racetrack. This racetrack changes a lot the more rubber it goes down on it. And again, when the heat comes up, she gets real breezy.
Starts really sliding around.
We see a couple of drivers like 25 Brian Vickers, who drifted to the back of the pack and now trying to work their way up through. An important part of practice is how your car will draft, how it will suck up as he tries to get up against the back bumper of Michael Waltrip, and what happens to that car when you pull out and try to pass.
And the big thing they're working with here when it talk about sucking up means how your car pulls up to the back of another car. There's things you can do with the gear ratio. They don't have a gear rule here per se like we do at all the unrestricted racetracks. You can pretty much select whatever gear you want. Plus that hole at the base of the windshield, the cowl induction that feeds the engine with air, you can sometimes, even though the size is mandated, you can sometimes change the shape of the plenum of that hole, and you can help the way the car sucks up in a draft.
Looking back from the pole sitter for the Daytona 500, Jeff Burton in the singular Chevy.
He's pulling some cars along, and you can see that there's a car pulling up right there on the back bumper, the Ford Fusion right there, closing up to the back bumper, and that's exactly what you want to see as you come in here. That's Greg Biffle right in behind him, closing up. His car looks like it's pulled up really well through the corners and coming off. This is what you want to have happen as a crew chief and a driver. You want a car that will do this at your wheel.
And, of course, he's getting a little bit of help, Greg Biffle in the 16, from the cars behind him, pushing him, not literally, but just pushing him through the air as well.
No, that literal pushing was the subject of a lot of talk in the garage Sunday night and this morning from defending Nextel Cup champ Tony Stewart, talking about the bump drafting and the slam drafting and how dangerous when that happens in the corners. And NASCAR has said they will take a look at it, and they're going to take a hard stance against any type of bump drafting or slam drafting that upsets the car being bumped. May result in penalties. Watch Brian Vickers in the 25 here.
Real wide right there, Jimmy. Whoa, hang on there, buddy.
Tried to get away from Robbie Gordon,
yeah,
and almost got into David Stremme in the 40. There's Marty on our pole sitter.
And Jeff Burton has been running up in front of this pack, guys, and the speeds have been okay for Burton, but he told me between sessions he actually wasn't very happy with how the car was handling. He described it as fair, so the car was just too loose. The thing that he was amazed about, though, and Larry and Jeff, you can talk about this, he said the weather difference was unbelievable. You've talked about it already, but he said even from the beginning of that first practice to the end of that first practice, he could notice a difference in the racetrack, and even in this practice, he said it's even slicker yet in this practice this afternoon.
And Jeff, we talk about this so much. That is the car that's set on the Bud pole. He's got a fast race car. But as you've heard me say, there are no free lunches in aero. If you've got a fast race car here, yeah, sometimes it's because you got good power, but it's because the aero drag is low in the car. It'll run down the straightaways. But when you've got the drag low, it sometimes does not have the downforce you need. In the perfect world, you could come here and qualify a low drag car and race a high downforce car.
Well, right now, Larry, I don't think he's happy with that 31 car yet. He's coming back to pit road right now. Just jumped out of that big pack. We're 3 wide through 3 and 4 right now. We got some real intense racing off of turn 4. And they're being led by this rookie, Reed Sorensen, in the 41 car. I've been watching him. He's been out front for about 3 laps now. And he's doing a pretty strong job right there, being followed by Elliott Sadler, but 3 wide down through the tri-oval. I mean, this right here is what you're going to be seeing all day tomorrow during those dual 150s.
And in the middle, right behind Kurt Busch, you see 4 cars lined up. That's 4 cars that have to race their way in. Scott Wimmer in the 4, Mike Wallace in the 09, Mike Skinner in the 23, and Robbie Gordon in that 7 car.
Fastest lap of this practice on the chart, Brian Vickers and Mike Wallace in second over Greg Biffle, Dale Jarrett, and Matt Kenseth. Welcome back to Daytona. Watch the 17 of Matt Kenseth come into view right here. And he's got clean air there. No, he doesn't. And it's a good thing. Those are both his teammates in front and behind.
It's a good thing he's a very talented driver. And, you know, from the rodeo side of that, yeehaw, ride him, cowboy. He had his hands full.
Right in front of his teammate, Jamie McMurray, now in the 26 car.
Marty?
Well, Mike, earlier we saw the interesting move Brian Vickers made out on the racetrack, and he said, you know, his car's okay. We saw him drop back in the back of the pack, try and pull up and pass all those guys. He said, you know, I can run with the pack, but my car's so tight I just can't pass anyone. If I don't have a tremendous amount of help, I'm not going to get around anyone. So, Larry and Jeff, how do you fix that? That's the big question, and that's what Lance McGrew is trying to figure out right now. The car extremely tight for Brian Vickers. Alan?
If we want to stay in those rodeo terms, Jeremy Mayfield might describe the front end of his car as a bucking. Whoop, got one going up in smoke out on the racetrack. That's not good. To finish off Jeremy Mayfield, his car's front end bouncing up and down while he's in traffic and in the corners, so they came in, undid the change they did, made a couple other tweaks, and he's going to go back out and try it again.
You know the old adage, when do those engines run best?
Just before they blow up.
Mike Wallace had the second fastest time in this session, and that's what went kaboom.
And just remember, this is the same car that 1 year ago was trying to race its way in with Johnny Sauter when it blew up with about 10 or 12 laps to go, leading the race.
That's right.
Guys, I just noticed he's got a flat left front tire, so he must have had a lot of stuff come out from inside this engine.
Red flag at Daytona. Well, you won't see that car in the next episode of Pinks, but you will see a whole new season of the Lose Your Race, Lose Your Ride, everything all on the line show on Speed. That's a big hit. And it all starts February 22nd, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Season 2. Here's what happened to Mike Wallace.
Jeff, I think we concluded something a little different happened than what we thought.
Yeah, coming down through, I think Mike felt the left front tire going flat, and all of a sudden you see the tire blow, and just shortly after that, you start seeing smoke come out of the back of the car, and Larry Mack, more than likely, he has torn an oil line loose from the oil cooler, which is normally mounted on the left side of the car. He's trying to get it stopped at the same time, shut that engine off, because, you know, these guys can change the engine only once. Otherwise, he'll wind up having to go to the back of the pack. You'll look right through here. There's that oil, stream of oil all the way back up to the back of the car. And when he broke that oil line, it's all over the racetrack down low. That's the good thing. He did get down out of the groove.
Now, your passenger car has an inner fender between the wheel and tire and the engine compartment, but these cars do not.
No, it's just pretty much wide open. But Jeff, just considering that this is a car, they have to race their way in. They cannot take any chances. If there's any inclination at all that motor ran with that oil line broke, I'd say they've got to put a different engine in this car. Do not take a chance.
I would not if I want to run the Daytona 500.
Red flag is out for Mike Wallace. 39 of the 58 contenders for the Daytona 500 have made laps in the early going of this final hour of practice. Coming up next from Daytona International Speedway, NASCAR Busch Series practice. Stay with us for that. We're in the final hour of Nextel Cup practice for the Gatorade Duel at Daytona tomorrow. Marty?
Well, earlier Casey Kane told me his car was loose in the first practice. Now he says it's tight in this practice. Is that because of changes you've made to the car, or because of the weather changes on the racetrack making it a little slicker?
Well, we actually made some changes there to try to help it, and might have went a little too far. I think it got a little slicker too, so whatever direction you are, it's worse that way. But feel pretty good. You know, our Stanley, Dodge dealers, everybody that's part of this race team's done a good job, and hopefully it'll be good in the 150s. We're looking forward to it.
Now, you tell me everybody's playing nice out there today. Is the draft a little calmer than you expected today?
It's calmer than it was Sunday. I know that in the shootout, but you know, it'll be pretty wild again tomorrow, and then by Sunday it's going to be, everybody will be for themselves, and we'll see what happens. But you know, definitely just want a safe race Sunday, but it's going to be exciting, that's for sure.
All right, Casey Kane with a tight race car, but happy, says it works well in the draft, and he can pull up to other cars. That's a big help.
Thanks, Marty. They're removing Mike Wallace's car. Turn 4 has been the spot of several incidents today. Brian Vickers will lose there. Coming off 4. And Matt Kenseth. Before you lose there, Jamie McMurray led him in line.
And Mike, that's why our voice always goes up an octave when they're 3 wide. It's not that the racetrack is not wide enough, but if anyone bobbles when they're 3 or 4 wide, that's when they get in trouble.
Very little room to go. And then, of course, Mike Wallace, who has put us under the red flag for the time being. Alan?
Jimmy Johnson has climbed from his car. By the way, the front of the car and the windshield very, very clean. Nothing on there. Did you get an eyeful out there for a second?
I'm not sure. What went on around me?
Just the guy in front of you there when all that smoke started coming out and everything.
You know what? I wasn't paying attention. I guess I was looking somewhere else, and everything was fine with me from where I was. I got a great race car. This thing is flying. So very, very pleased with all the hard work under the troubling times and tough situation that we're under. Chad did a great job getting this car prepared, and the guys are doing a great job executing what we need to, and we've got a great race car.
Track conditions changing as the day goes along. Have you had to chase the racetrack at all with what you've done under the race car, or has it been pretty solid all along?
Yeah, I think we'll be chasing it. Typical Daytona stuff. Now the sun's come back out. It's been out, but it's been cool over the last few days. It's just getting slicker and slicker, and it's doing what we expected it to do right now. It's still Daytona.
All right, thanks, Jimmy.
Good deal, thank you.
Marty.
Alan Martin Truex Jr. kind of debriefing with Richie Gilmore and Kevin Mannion as crew chief. Richie, the general manager at DEI. And you said, quote, cars moving real good in the draft, but not that fast in the corners. You unhappy with it there, but happy with it down the straightaways?
Well, the first practice we had some handling issues. We were trying some stuff and it just wouldn't turn at all. But we got it pretty good now. It's real balanced, driving real good. It's fast. It sucks up good. So I was having a little fun out there up towards the front of the pack, passing and staying in line a little bit. We're just going to try a few more things. We need to get it turning just a little bit better. It's still a little too tight, and I'm sure it'll get worse as the week goes on. So but just try to free it up a little bit more.
Worse as in slicker, right?
Yeah, slicker. It got really slick there about 15 laps into that run, and it got just a little too tight for me. So we're going to try to free it up some more. And
Martin Truex Jr., one of those guys heading back out here in a moment as practice continues from Daytona on speed.
The track is open once again. Final practice for the Gatorade Duel at Daytona. The twin 150-mile qualifying race is tomorrow. And in this pack of cars, 2 Chevys pacing this bunch. 29, Kevin Harvick, and 8, Dale Earnhardt Jr. about to catch up to Tony Stewart.
Seems like every time we're down here, and it even was going on in the Budweiser shootout, we see Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the 8 car, Tony Stewart in the 20 car working together. They've done it a couple of times in the Daytona 500, and we started seeing, I think, a little bit of it in the Budweiser shootout Sunday. And even though that the Monte Carlo, you see the Monte Carlo SS, they've had a nose change and a tailpiece change. We're riding with Tony Stewart right now in the Home Depot car. This is the same car that he led over half the Daytona 500 with a year ago. It's the car he set on the Bud pole and just annihilated the field in July, led all but 9 of 160 laps. This is the same race car. I think that's one reason he himself, even though the team didn't skip testing, he felt pretty comfortable about playing hooky this winter.
Junior pulls up alongside. There's Marty.
Yeah, Mike, this is lap number 3 for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in this session. What they did not, it's not what they wanted, because they wanted a lot of laps during this session because he was not happy with the race car in the first practice today. They said the car was extremely loose. Junior never got a good handle on it, so they're hoping to run as many laps as they can. Look for a long run right here from Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Jeff, I'm just hearing more and more. I know the track's slick, but more and more cars are loose. I think these guys have focused so much on getting the front end of these race cars to stick and to bite where you don't get that push. It sounds like maybe they've overstepped the boundaries just a little bit, and they've got the cars actually loose now, especially in these kind of track conditions.
You know, I agree with you, Larry. You know, so for so long it was like it won't turn, and now the crew chiefs have really worked on it along with the engineers to come up with a combination of camber, shots, and sway bars and springs to get the front end gripping to where all of a sudden that back end is really dancing around. And we've seen when somebody takes the air off the wrong way, the car jumps. I mean, literally out underneath these guys.
Plus, I think when Ford developed the Fusion nose, the Chevrolet developed the new Monte Carlo nose, it was with the forethought of the downforce racetracks trying to get more downforce in the front ends of these race cars.
Why? Because there are more downforce racetracks than there are 2.5-mile super speed races.
32 of those races.
Right. Alan?
Bobby Labonte, who will start second in his qualifying race on Thursday, sitting up on the scales in the garage. He described his car as being about a 3. In the first practice session, he told crew chief Todd Parrott when he came in from this run, it's up to about a 7 right now. A little fender rub on the left front they want to fix. Also a couple of chassis adjustments, but making improvements here on the Petty 43.
Boy, so many changes there in the offseason. Team general manager, crew chief, driver, just about everything but the decals.
A lot of other crew member changes I'm hearing on that race team, and he was by far the fastest qualifying Dodge on Sunday in qualified 5th.
Got themselves pretty much an all-star lineup over there at that Petty Enterprises. Again, we're looking at Dale Earnhardt Jr. right in what looked like, yeah, that's Stanton Barrett in 95, and it looked like Stanton had his hands full off of turn 4 right there a minute ago. So, again, these cars are sliding around a lot on this hot day, and Dale Jr. is putting a lot of pressure on him on the inside right now, trying to get by him.
Let's get an update on Mike Wallace's problem. Here's Marty.
Yeah, Mike, we found the tire. This is the left front from Mike Wallace's 09 car, and you can clearly see that something happened to it to cause the problem with the engine. Let's see if we can walk this way. You can see the left front fender on the car. They've got a fair bit of work to do on Mike Wallace's car. It tore up the fender pretty bad, so not only do they have the engine problem you guys described about, you're probably not going to use that engine, put a brand new one in. They also have to fix this fender, mold it back the way it was, and then tomorrow they got to race their way into the Daytona 500. So other than that, everything's going great for Mike Wallace. So Mike is not back. Actually, Mike is here. Let's see if we can get a word with him real quick. Mike, any indication that something was going to go wrong there?
No, we were actually running really well. The 48 was tucked up a rear bumper. The car was putting it everywhere, and it appeared it blew up. Well, it did. It blew a left front tire coming off of 4, and it started vibrating. You know, you can't just check up instantly. I was trying to get out of the way, and by the time I got out of the way on the bottom of the racetrack, it had catastrophic tire failure at that time then. But the Miccosukee car was really good at the time, and just, I don't know, we were trying to work on all our camber wears and all that. I don't know if we just ran over something. We'll see here. It's a shame because now it's ripped the fender up, ripped an oil line up. Then you got to go to the infield care center and do that whole deal. It's like, boy, hate to see if something comes loose anymore. But it's a shame, but all in all, we'll fix it up and hopefully good for tomorrow.
Are you worried about the engine, and now you must race your way into the 500 with a lot of unknown pieces? You going to be able to sleep tonight?
Well, you know, it's a lot of stress coming down to Daytona when you're not in the 500. You know, you got to race your way in. No, the guys do a good job. I don't think it damaged the engine in any way. I mean, I shut the motor off as soon as I actually thought it blew up first of all, you know, because it's vibrating and shaking, and then I realized it blew a left front tire. I fired it up and drove it a little bit farther and had oil pressure and everything. I shut it off because you could tell it was going to tear the car up worse. But hey, I at least got a shot, you know, so we'll go win the race tomorrow or run the top 2, and then we'll party tomorrow night and do well in the truck race and have a good time.
He's raced his way in before, but they have a lot of work to do and a lot of evaluation to figure out what all needs to be fixed before tomorrow's race.
Now that shot of Mike Wallace, could he double Will Ferrell or what?
In his own little way.
I mean, you know, Will's movie Talladega Nights comes out in August, and he could certainly double Will Ferrell as Ricky Bobby, star NASCAR driver. Funny movie.
Here you see Travis Quapple in that 32 car. I talked to Travis and Cal Wells, the owner of this team, a lot during the winter. They have been nervous all winter long about coming down here. They were not in the top 35 in owner points, about having to either qualify or race their way into the Daytona 500. They were one of those cars on Sunday that was one of the fastest 3 cars that was not in the top 35. And I think a lot has to do with their efforts over the winter. They tested here. They went to the GM Proving Grounds at a 5-mile racetrack and ran for 2 days. Plus, they do have Richard Childress Racing horsepower under the hood, which I'm pretty sure helped as well.
And the way he knows he's in the race, even if he does not finish in one of the top 2 spots in his Gatorade duel race, not counting the drivers locked in on owner points, their time on Sunday was one of the fastest 3 of those drivers contending for the rest of the spots. And that's how many positions are open at the back of the grid after the spots are filled from the qualifying races. So he will be in the show. Ryan Newman made 10 laps in this session, but he's 38th on the speed chart, Alan.
And Mike, you'll not see him make any more laps in this practice session. The 12 car is done, feeling good enough about it that they don't need to put any more laps on it out there on the speedway.
Well, and Jeff and I have been talking about that a lot. When that car is finally driving good and that driver feels good and you've accomplished everything you want to accomplish, right there where you see the 12 car, you know for the most part it can't get in trouble right there. It's nice and safe.
Right, because that picture on the right, you can get in some trouble out there, especially when they come through this trial 3 wide.
Well, you hate to talk about hurricanes, because we've seen so many around the United States this year. But this right here is definitely the eye of the storm right now as far as practice is considered. And yes, if you're in that garage area, you're a whole lot better off. And don't be surprised that a lot of guys that know they're in this race, they may test their cars tomorrow, but they're not going to put their best race car in harm's way if they know they're going to get a chance to start the Daytona 500. So I think we're going to be seeing a mixture of strategy for the remainder of the day as well as tomorrow as far as leading into the Daytona 500.
Now, we've talked about Mike Wallace being the fastest in this session of the drivers not yet qualified for the race. The fellow who is second on that list is right there with Martin.
And you talk about a man who's right on the border of making this race or not, Robbie. I mean, you can't be more on the fence than you, can you?
We are on the fence, but we're real proud of all these guys. They built us a good race car. It's handling good. I think we've been 14th both sessions right now. So, you know, we've run long runs. That run there was 22 laps. Car still turns pretty good. Got a little bit of work to do. I want to be a little better on the bottom in the 150s. So I'm going to have to free my car just a little more.
You sort of have the month of Daytona here, and you've been through the month at Indy several times. Compare the pressure of trying to make both races when you're right on the fence.
Well, there's a big difference. At Indy, there is no top 35 gig. So, you know, we would have easily made it on speed. I think, what were we, 22nd? So we'd easily make it on speed if it wasn't for the top 35 deal. But I understand what NASCAR is trying to do. And one of these days when we get inside that top 35, I'll be happy we're there.
All right, Robbie, now we're talking about his race team earlier, and he said, you know, we've come a long way this year. We're going to impress some people, but first, I need to make the Daytona 500.
Thanks, Marty. Now there's pole sitter Jeff Burton for the 500 in that orange Chevrolet number 31, the singular Chevy. Joe Nemechek drafting off him, and then Dave Blaney in the 22. You know, you've got the spot locked up to start up front in the Daytona 500, provided nothing happens to this car. If he has to go to a backup, he goes to the back of the field. So how many laps do you want to run in this practice? What are you still looking to do here?
Well, I think they want to make sure they don't do what Dale Jarrett did a year ago. Like Robert Yates told me, we had the Bud pole for the Daytona 500 for 7 days. We lost it in 7 seconds when they dropped the green flag. His crew chief, Scott Miller and Jeff, they're just working very hard, making sure that car is driving good for Jeff, that it's good on the long run. You've got to make a long run to know where your race car is at.
Jeff, I guess it's like having a rifle. You can't use up all your bullets too early, but you need to make sure it'll shoot straight.
Yeah, you've got to make sure of all that right there. As you see Jeff Burton right now bringing that 31 car back into the garage here. He's backed off the throttle. But like Larry's saying right now, I think everybody understands now what needs to be done when you come down here to make your car work well. He's an experienced driver with an experienced crew chief, and I know that they made a lot of changes after qualifying to put a handling package underneath this car that he can race the 500 miles.
The driver who has logged the most laps in this session, 23, is Mark Martin. Alan?
Hey, Mike, you know how Mark gets that emphasis and that emotion in his voice when he really wants to make a point? He was just on the radio just when they were in the garage making that last change before, and he said, this car is awfully hard to drive. I've never driven a car so loose. I think the 2 points he was trying to make is awfully and loose.
Did his voice go up about half an octave on loose?
You know what I'm talking about. How his voice kind of cracks, and yeah, that was the Mark on the radio here just a few minutes ago.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, because that loose is at about 190 miles per hour.
In traffic.
Add it all up, and it's loose. A number of Daytona 500 contenders find themselves deep on the speed chart. One of those, the 38th Candyman, Elliott Sadler, 39th on speed right now as he works underneath David Stremme.
But Mike, I think he's doing the same thing that Larry has been talking about and I've been talking about. Focus on the handling. Focus on the handling, because right now, the early part of a run, yes, some impressive times will be put down, but the key to winning one of these 150s and winning the 500 is being able to hold that bad boy wide open on that last lap of the race and be able to drive to the bottom when you need to.
All of the top 6 times in this session were set on either a driver's first or second lap of practice to back that up. One of those was Clint Boyer, the rookie. He's the fastest rookie in this field. In the Jack Daniels 07, he's 6th fastest in this session, and it's to that point.
And Mike, we were talking about 58 cars here. Clint is one of 15 drivers attempting to make their first Daytona 500. So about a fourth of those 58 drivers, they're trying to make their first start here in the 500.
15. That's a pretty large number. Mike, you've been coming down here a long time. Can you ever remember that many trying to make their first Daytona 500?
I don't think so, Jeff. It's a big rookie crop. Not all of them will run the full season. But that's a lot of rookies. In fact, for some of them, like Brent Sherman, he's looking to make his first ever Nextel Cup start. He takes over the 49, vacated by Kenny Schrader.
No pressure.
Alan, what is Elliott Sadler up to?
Well, since you asked, I went down and checked it out, and he says that they think one of the reasons they're not as fast as some of the other guys, they went out in this session on scuff tires, where a lot of the people put on sticker tires to start this practice run, and they figure that's cost them a little bit of speed with this group.
And Larry, you and I both talked about this early in the first practice. Hey, you better get 4 fingers and get everything up, because you're going to need to have 4 fresh tires on this race car every time you get an opportunity. But a pretty smart move right there by Tommy Baldwin and Elliott Sadler to see exactly where their car is on the old tires. So if they can get it to ride on old tires, those 4 good years that are brand new, it's just going to feel that much better.
There's going to be a lot on the shoulders in these 150s tomorrow of the pit crew, because we know a 60-lap race with the smaller fuel cell, 13.5 gallons, you can only run about 35 laps. So we know there will be at least one pit stop, but trust me, every time the caution flies, probably most everyone's going to be on pit road getting 4 fresh tires.
Well, that's it. From what we saw in the Budweiser shootout and what we've seen in practice, would anybody dare gamble and go with 2 tires or no tires? Is it worth the risk?
It didn't work out in the Budweiser shootout, and it was about 30 degrees colder.
You don't want to do that.
Marty?
Well, Mike, as promised, Earnhardt Jr. went out. They ran 9 laps, which is actually a fairly long run here at Daytona. And Jr. is just not happy with the handling of the race car. I don't know any other way to put it. He said it pushes going into the corner, in the middle of the corner, and it's worse coming off the corner than anything. It's extremely tight. He said, I'm not going to be able to pass people like this. Time is running out. They have a lot of work to do on the 18. Alan?
Yeah, that tight word applying for Carl Edwards as well. Last report, the car was still tight and getting tighter as they aged the tires on the race car. So they made a couple of changes, thinking about throwing another spring rubber in to try and help that out if they have enough time to make one more change before the end of the session.
Guys, now you understand what Daytona and weather, when they get together, what happens to you. This is where that anxiety and feeling like you've got confidence in your setup, all of a sudden, guess what? Everything gets thrown a curve, and you've got to be able to react to it. And the guys that can come up with a handling package that works in this kind of condition, and to me, what I think about this scenario right now, I get to thinking about that 20 car and how dominating he was here July 4th on the racetrack that's hot and slick. Greg Zipadelli's probably got a pretty good package to work underneath their race car right now.
Yeah, I would say even though he didn't cut that real fast qualifying lap, qualified 17th on Sunday, he's probably got a pretty good driving race car. Tell you what, right there in front of Kurt Busch in the 2 car, Kirk Shelmerdine in that 27 car. Regardless if Kurt makes the Daytona 500 or not, he should be pretty proud of his qualifying run on Sunday. He qualified 32nd, but I think what makes that so good, he out-qualified all 3 of the DEI cars. So, I mean, that's a lot to be said for what Kurt has accomplished here, and I certainly know he hopes to make the Daytona 500, but they've come a long way from last year.
Hang on a second. You see the 18 car, J.J. Yeley? He just about got loose right in front of that big pack he's in front of right now. Casey Mears, for example, and Jeff Green. I mean, his car was doing some dancing through the middle of that turn 1 and 2.
They gave him a lot of room, and good thing.
A lot of give and take right now by that pack behind him.
Larry, let's see it again.
Going off there in turn 1. Right in the middle, right there. The car starts dancing around. And also, whoa, it jumps up the racetrack. Casey Mears had to give him some room. Again, he had his hands full all the way up off of turn 2 before he got control of that race car.
Now, Casey Mears could see what happened and give him some room, but what about Stremme behind Casey Mears? Yeah, he could see it too. So fortunately, everybody backed off, including Jamie McMurray behind Stremme.
And what I'm seeing right now during this practice session, again, as we watch the 18 car J.J. Yeley, I see a lot more gap between these race cars and guys kind of like looking by each other and seeing what's going on in front of them. And I think because of this, we've missed some golden opportunities to stack a lot of race cars up, but these guys have been able to react to that, give each other some room, and avoid the big wreck.
Well, Jeff, how much does today pay?
0.
Right. But you're right. There's a lot of heads-up driving here.
Yes, they're doing a really good job here today, and I think still learning a lot about their race cars for tomorrow.
There's our pole sitter, Jeff Burton, and here's Marty.
Well, Larry and Jeff were talking earlier about Jeff trying to find the setup, for handling for the race. Obviously, he has the speed being on the pole, but they just have not hit the handling. Car was too tight. They put a smaller front sway bar in. They also changed the right front spring. But guys, there's very few things you can work with on these race cars that aren't regulated by NASCAR. So it's a very small window that you have to make your race car better.
Yeah, I mean, you're locked in the rear shocks. You're pretty much locked in the rear springs. About the biggest things you have to work with is the front sway bar, the front springs, and the front shocks. But I'm going to tell you another car we have not talked a lot about is Terry Labonte in that number 96 car, the Hall of Fame racing car owned by Roger Staubach and Troy Aikman. This car had a problem after qualifying on Sunday. It had an unapproved carburetor on it. Now remember, it's a brand new race team, brand new operation, but they used Joe Gibbs Racing engines. But I honestly believe, even though it was not approved, I think it was an honest mistake. It was a fuel mileage type carburetor that's legal next week in Fontana, but it's not approved at the carburetor restrictor plate races. But because it was not approved, their time was disallowed. They don't have to race their way in because Terry Labonte is in, but they're going to have to start shotgun on the field in that second Gatorade Duel race.
Terry, he's a former past Nextel Cup champion, so that gives him that opportunity to be in the Daytona 500.
And quite frankly, that's why he's in this car. They're going to run, what, Tony Raines for much of the season, but Terry Labonte will drive some races for this team, try to get them up in the owner points, and he does have the availability of the past champions provisional if needed, because he's the most recent past champion that is active and not among the top 35 in owner points.
And Mike, even though that's well within the rule book, I tend to disagree with that. You know, if Terry Labonte was going to be in this car the entire season, I could understand it. But they're going to use him for 5 races and 2 road course races. Those 5 races is when they go off of last year's points. It's nothing against Troy or Roger. They did what they needed to do as businessmen, but I just think it's wrong that a race team that has never fielded a car in Nextel Cup, they come here to Daytona, guaranteed a spot in the Daytona 500. You've got Larry McClure, owner of the 4 car, been coming here for 20 years. He's got to race his way in. But Larry McClure had the same option.
Yeah, it's a good point. The other side of that point is Larry McClure's car was not in the top 35. And the only reason a spot opened up was because the 77 team shut down. And then the ownership of that team was sold to Michael Walter, which is another story.
Another story that I'm not sure I can tell in 6 minutes.
No, we're going to run out of time for that one today.
Boys, I hate to tell you this. It just is what it is.
And it's taking a real close read of the rule book and of the opportunities presented and making the most of them. And that's what 58 different owners and crew chiefs and drivers are all here trying to do. Make the most of the opportunity.
And you talked about like what today pays, nothing. It just to start Sunday's race is roughly $225,000.
$225,000?
Just to start the race.
Don't quit your day job. Robbie Gordon, second quickest among the drivers who must race their way in, and third fastest in that group is the 92 of Chad Chaffin from Tennessee. Then Scott Riggs, then Terry Labonte among the top 5 of that group. Tell you who looks like he's had a great week down here is Kurt Busch. He's had a lot of fun. He's been laughing, joking with our pit reporters, with the rest of the press, and really on tap for a great season here with Penske Racing in that Miller Lite Dodge. And the car's been pretty quick as well.
Been pretty quick, and again, he's made some good moves. I mean, let's face it, he is a former Nextel Cup champion. He's very talented, and I think he's going to do a lot of good things for this 2 car and represent the guy that he has replaced, Rusty Wallace, very creditably. So, you know, I look for great things to come out of him this year in that number 2 car.
Well, what I've seen with Kurt Busch in the 2 car and Jamie McMurray in that 26 car, they've got bounce in their step. And I think they just were ready for a change.
There's the flag.
Rodney Wise on top of the flag stand.
And he lets her fly. The red and black together signifying this final practice for the Gatorade Duel is done. Drivers have few opportunities to practice getting down to pit road speed, and not sure if when the red and black flag wave should be one of them. But look at this charge onto pit road into the garage.
Larry, looky here at Scott Riggs coming on pit road. I was getting ready to make the comment, listen to those crew chiefs breathe a sigh of relief, and all of a sudden the smoke starts coming off the tin. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, not the time to be doing this.
Here's Alan.
Mark Martin, how's your race car now that you're done with practice?
Well, it's good. Really like this AAA Ford Fusion these guys put together for the 500. I thought my car in the shootout did well, but this car's a little better.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Marty?
Well, for the guy who was fastest in practice, Brian Vickers didn't seem very happy on the radio with your race car, Brian.
Well, you know, we can always get better. And, you know, I think we got a good car. We, the first time out, you know, we were real fast, but it's because we was catching the pack. We worked a little bit on the cow, and I was a lot happier with it, how it sucked up the other cars and even how the throttle response stand out front. So we made a lot of gains there, and now we just got to get the car handled a little bit better. We'll be good.
No matter how fast you are, there's always work to do.
A lot of work to do tomorrow. 150 miles worth for everybody to try to get into the 500.
19 cars for 4 spots. You have to be in the top 2 of one of those races of the group that's not locked in yet.
Sleepless nights for a lot of these drivers or crews.
Tomorrow on TNT, you'll see what many feel are the best races of Speed Weeks. The Gatorade Twin Duels at Daytona. It is go or go home day for many of the NASCAR Nextel Cuppers. Enjoy the race.